music, the important thing isn't can you read music, it's can you hear it. Can you hear the music, Robert? Yes, I can.
Back in the summer of 2016, I finished up high school in Minnesota and made my way to campus at Vanderbilt University to start college. I loved my time in Minnesota, but after living there my whole life, it was definitely starting to feel a bit comfortable. So I was excited to head down to Nashville, experience some warmer weather, meet some more diverse people, and challenge myself in this new season of my life. For the first year and a half of Vandy, I majored in biomedical engineering, so the majority of my classes were in math, science, and engineering. But midway through my sophomore year, I realized that I didn't want to be pigeonholed into just working on medical tech, so I decided to consider other engineering majors. And in the spring of my sophomore year, I took my first computer science class, CS 1101, taught in Java. So this was an introduction to programming, so we learned about things like data types, functions, and the basics of object-oriented programming. And I remember we had these programming assignments which took between 10 to 15 hours and were due on Saturdays. So we had a lot of late nights on Thursdays and Fridays trying to get these done. But overall, looking back, even though I had no programming experience going in, I fell in love with the idea of writing my own logic to solve problems, which made me want to stick with CS and see where this could go. So after that, I entered my junior year. And honestly, I wasn't doing great socially up to this point, so I decided to get more involved around campus. I joined Vandy Hacks, which is Vanderbilt's annual hackathon to meet more people in the CS community. I also joined TDS, which is Vanderbilt's annual Diwali show. This helped me make some more friends and celebrate Indian culture, which is something I didn't get to do a lot of growing up in Minnesota. And finally, I also joined ASB, which is a student-run service org that does service trips around the country for spring break. And I did a lot of PR for this org, and this is the first time I got exposed to and found a new interest in videography. I got a Nikon D5600, and I remember just spending a lot of time that semester going around campus and storytelling about the experiences we were having as part of this org and also the different charities that we were working with. So academically, I was playing a lot of catch up this year since I started the major late, and I took a lot of the core math and computer science classes. I won't go through all of them, but in the fall, a few of the important ones were data structures, which was things like stacks, queues, trees, and all the ways of storing data, and a lot of the foundational CS, which I still use to this day. I also took digital logic, which was an electrical engineering course, and we learned things like Boolean algebra, combinational logic, and numbering systems. So moving on to the spring, I took discrete structures, which taught us about the math behind a lot of algorithms. We did things like logic, proofs, and algorithm analysis using big O notation. And I also took intermediate software design, which was about using the C++ standard template library to actually implement these algorithms like sorting and searching. And it also taught us the importance of writing efficient, maintainable code. Honestly, the courses this year were pretty challenging. They were all taught in C++, which also made them twice as hard. And more broadly, Vandy also had a lot of grade deflation. So I would say when it came to grades, I was an above average student. I think I had a B+ average when I graduated. But when it came to CS, I tried to focus more on whether I could learn the content in class and then apply what I learned to real world problems. And these classes definitely prepared me well to enter the CS internship market that spring. And up until that point, my resume was pretty sparse besides a few research projects. So I was basically just applying anywhere that I could. And luckily, one of the companies I met through Vandy Hacks offered me an interview, and I passed the behavioral and technical rounds and the final round and got offered a spot in their intern class for that summer in Chicago. So I spent 3 months in downtown in a fully paid for apartment. And our internship was called Startup Camp. So they split the intern class into teams of 6, which had software engineer interns, product manager interns, and design interns. And we were tasked with building a startup over the course of the summer. And we would pitch the startup at the end, and the winning project would become an actual product of the company. So my team built an educational iOS app which used learning algorithms and NLP to advise students on when they should study certain subjects for maximum retention. And we didn't end up winning, but looking back, it was still a really great summer. I made a lot of friends in the intern class. I got to go around the city and experience the Chicago summer. I also came to really enjoy the hustle culture that came with the startup and building a software product from 0 to 1. And this just made me more passionate about wanting to do CS full-time after I graduated. Finally, we're entering senior year, and I had completed most of the math and CS requirements, so I was able to take more focused and applied CS classes. In the fall, a couple of the interesting ones I took were cybersecurity, where we learned about different types of vulnerabilities in code and how to write more secure code. And I also took Intro to Functional and Concurrent Processing, which taught us about using functional programming and how to manage and execute multiple streams in Java to reduce latency. So after that came my final semester, spring senior year, and this was a big semester for me because it was the first time I got exposed to machine learning. And this happened a few different ways. One, I took a class called Topics in Big Data, where we learned how to use SQL for querying databases, Kafka for building data pipelines, and Python and scikit-learn for building ranking models. I also took a formal research class where I was able to apply what I learned in big data to a real-world problem. So in the middle of the semester was actually the time when COVID cases started to rise for the first time in the United States. And in March of that year, we got an email that the semester was being put on halt and that we all had to pack our bags and head home. And this was definitely a hard time. We all had to say goodbye to our friends. I penned a goodbye letter in our school newspaper, and I packed everything up and headed back to Minneapolis to finish the rest of the semester. So academically, there were a lot of changes at this time. A lot of classes became pass-fail. All the classes became remote learning, and my research project actually evolved. We decided to work on a COVID-related problem. We used the footage from these natural buses that we were working with to build a computer vision model to identify seat occupancy and notify natural citizens whether they could socially distance on a bus before they actually got on. During quarantine, like a lot of people, I got the chance to spend some time alone and think a lot. And I came to the realization that learning about ML and using ML to essentially predict the future was really fascinating to me. I remember spending a lot of my free time watching movies like Transcendence or Ex Machina and learning about things like the Turing test, and just really wanting to explore this field in more depth and ultimately wanting to be a part of it. Towards the end of that semester, I kind of made the impulsive decision that I wanted to go to grad school and do a master's where I focused on data science and machine learning. And even though I missed a lot of the grad school deadlines because they're usually in January, I applied to wherever I could, and ultimately I got accepted into Boston University and the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. And I ultimately ended up choosing the University of Illinois because it seemed like a better program and it was closer to home. After that, all that was left was to finish the semester, graduate virtually from my home, and spend the rest of the summer excited to start my new chapter with a focus on machine learning. Fast forward to 2020, I made the drive down from Minnesota to Champaign to start my master's. And from the jump, I could tell that this was definitely going to be different from a traditional grad school experience. For one, most of the campus was empty. It was still COVID time, so we had weekly testing requirements, and most of my classes were remote. I feel like I made the most of this. I got my own studio to myself. I remember just being really focused and staying on top of school and other parts of my life like fitness, all because honestly there was just nothing really else to do on campus. So I was in a 2-year program which was focused on data science and analytics, which meant that basically every class you took was in one of those 2 areas. And that was perfect because that's exactly what I was looking for. And in my first semester, the two most important classes I took were Introduction to Data Science and Data Mining. In Intro to Data Science, I learned about pandas for the first time for data analysis, and Python and scikit-learn for supervised and unsupervised learning. And another important class was data mining. This was more of a theory-based machine learning fundamentals class. So we learned about when to use different models like decision trees or k-means or linear regression. And we also learned about how to evaluate these models using various metrics. The other two classes I took that semester were database design and prototyping, which was using SQL to set up and query databases, and socio-technical information systems, which was an ethics class. I also got serious about research this semester. I joined a computer science lab in which we were trying to use machine learning to automate the US Census. So we had computer vision models which identified information about cars in a certain area. We also had local business data and social media data from Twitter, and we were trying to build models that could predict the demographic makeup of the data from this publicly available information, ultimately hoping to save the US millions, if not billions of dollars that they spend on the census every year. So after that came my second semester of grad school. I decided to take a heavy course load because I wanted to graduate in 1.5 years instead of 2. So one class I took was data stats, which essentially taught us about all the statistics you need to know when answering machine learning questions. This is things like probability theory, distributions, and hypothesis testing, Bayes' theorem, all the different types of stats that data scientists use in their daily jobs. And I also took methods of data science. So this class was based on the book Introduction to Statistical Learning, which a lot of people consider to be the Bible of machine learning. And if you've read the book, you know that it teaches you a lot of the math behind all of the different types of machine learning models. And you also learn how to implement them from scratch in R. So I also took a class called text mining this semester, which was an NLP class focused on sentiment analysis, text clustering, and text regression. And this was the time when the GameStop and AMC stocks were going through the roof. So for the final project of this class, I built a model that took the posts from the Wall Street Bets subreddit and analyzed whether they had actual predictive value on the stocks that they were actually talking about. I also took another class this semester called Programming Analytics and Data Processing, and this was a heavy software engineering class in Python, which was good because all my CS classes in undergrad were in C++. And in this class I learned about implementing algorithms, data structures in Python, all of Python's libraries, and how to do test-driven development in Python. And for my final project in this class, I built a tool that takes all of the NBA draft lottery odds for every single team and runs a Monte Carlo simulation and shows you which team got which picks most often, similar to the Tankathon website. This was also a pretty stressful semester because I had to enter the data science intern market for the first time, which I honestly found more challenging than the software engineer intern market, mostly because you had to not only know LeetCode, but you also had to know machine learning, stats, and SQL. But nevertheless, I interviewed around and ultimately got a few offers and settled on working at BuzzFeed as a data science intern for that summer. So the internship was supposed to be in New York City, but because it was COVID, it ended up being virtual. So I ended up spending the summer working on their machine learning team on an NLP project. So the project I was working on was related to their product database, which got data from the Amazon API and other retailers. And editors would use this product database to write articles for BuzzFeed.com. If you've ever seen articles like top 10 things to buy before you die or something, all of the products from that article come from the product database. So the issue they were having was that products in this database had a lot of missing data, and they wanted to use these products to build recommendation systems in the future. So the more complete that data could be, the better their models would be, and thus they wanted me to fill the missing data in the product database. So the technique I used to do this was called named entity recognition, which means that I trained an NLP model to look at unstructured text like product descriptions or articles which were written about the products, which we usually had, and then identify entities like retailers or brands or prices, and extract them and programmatically insert them back into the product database. And by the end of the summer, even though it was a virtual internship, I remember just really enjoying all the work that I was doing and feeling really happy that I was breaking through in the field of data science. So after that, I headed back to Champaign for my final semester of grad school. I only had 3 classes left to take, and one of them was information modeling, which was a data viz class. I honestly don't remember much beyond that. The other was abstract linear algebra, which was a proof-based math class and kind of was important to help you understand the theory behind machine learning. And finally, I took a research credit to finish up and present the research that I'd been doing through grad school. So that wrapped up all my classes. Ultimately, I finished with a 3.94, and I would say grad school was completely worth it for me. I learned a ton and I got to study something I was interested in, and it ended up being a lot of fun, and it got me moving into a field that I was really excited about. And in terms of jobs, that semester I interviewed around and I narrowed it down to 2 offers. One was in SF and one was in New York City. And it had always been my dream to live in New York City. Since I was a kid, watching the ball drop in Times Square every New Year's Eve, to watching Casey Neistat's daily vlogs, I had always just wanted to come and live here and work here. So that was kind of a no-brainer. I ultimately decided to take the job as a data scientist in New York City. And after that, all that was left was to graduate and pack my bags and head to Manhattan to start work. So that sums up my background and my data science degree. If you're new to the channel, my name's Abhi. I'm planning on making data science lifestyle videos in New York City. And if this helped you at all, feel free to comment or hit the like button, and I will see you in the next one.